I'm joined now by the candidates running for the 102nd Legislative District in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. This district covers much of eastern Lebanon County. The candidates from left to right are Jake Long, a retired Hershey Foods factory worker and National Guardsman, the Democratic challenger, and Republican incumbent Russ Diamond. Both are from Anvil Township. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Let's start with the general question. Why running now? Why is this the right time? We'll start with Mr. Long.
I ran in 2014, and when you run, you have an obligation to understand the issues. I thought I did a good job of that. I realized that Pennsylvania has some real problems. If anything, some of those issues haven't been addressed, and it's actually worse than it was in 2014.
Mr. Diamond?
Well, I'm running for re-election because I think I've been a good legislator in Harrisburg. I believe I've been a strong voice for Lebanon County values. And I believe that I've been effective, especially even for a freshman in Harrisburg. So I believe that I would like to continue that work in the second term.
Let's talk about some of that work. You've been a strong proponent for eliminating property taxes. Why is that the right move? And sometimes the studies don't add up on that. So why is that the right time? And what can we do about property taxes, do you think?
Well, I do favor eliminating property taxes. I am a co-sponsor of House Bill 76. I'm also the prime sponsor of House Bill 1115, which would eliminate all property taxes. And that's a constitutional amendment that will need to be in place after House Bill 76 passes. Now, as far as the replacement revenue, I think we do have to talk about what we're going to use for that. Is it personal income tax, sales tax? I think the formula for House Bill 76 does work out now. However, I think we just haven't had enough votes favoring that in the House in Harrisburg to get that across the goal line. For everything you want to do in Harrisburg, you need 102 votes in the House, 26 votes in the Senate, and one governor to go along. We've not been able to get to 102 votes in the House. Hopefully, we'll elect new people in this election cycle that will give us that 102 votes in Harrisburg.
Mr. Long?
If I can say something about his approach, there is a reason why for at least 20 years we have not eliminated property taxes. It is very difficult to do. You have the obligations to the schools. Just let me say this about my opponent's proposals. He has not eliminated property taxes. In fact, I brought my property tax bill with me. I attended in September 12th. I attended a meeting at the Lebanon County Courthouse. It was actually a public sale of property owners who lost their homes, many of them because of high property taxes. Well, I have several sheets of them. They do that a couple times a year. What I'm saying is there's a lot of people losing their homes, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I recently ran into a situation where there was a woman in my district, an elderly woman, who had to sell her home. She couldn't pay her taxes. A $175,000 home, she had to accept $88,000. People are losing their homes, and when people like representatives like my opponent here promise to eliminate property taxes and they don't, seniors lose their homes, property taxes are squeezed, and they don't address the issues. We need to make certain that seniors don't lose their homes. We need to actually look at the Constitution, which is antiquated and ineffective, and allow school boards to go to other taxes. Those are doable, common sense, logical approaches which my opponent rejects.
So both calling from some very broad and definitive property tax reforms.
Right.
I'll let you respond to that in a way that hopefully leads to our next question. If you were in leadership, what other legislative goals would you like to see run? What would be your key goals to try to accomplish?
Well, I think in order to help alleviate the property tax problem, and by the way, I can't eliminate property taxes all by myself. I promised I'd go to Harrisburg to fight for elimination, and I've been fighting for elimination. I'm not the king. I have 203 other people to work with. So I can't do it myself. But I would also like to help alleviate the property tax problem, we absolutely positively have to address the pension crisis in Pennsylvania. Now, the legislature cannot roll back benefits. We simply cannot raise taxes enough to fill that $60 billion to $160 billion hole. What we need is for the public sector unions to voluntarily and collectively agree to take some concessions. And then I, as a legislator, will go after additional revenues to meet them in the middle to close that pension gap and reduce the burden on property owners in the school districts.
Mr. Long?
He mentioned most people say it's about $64 billion debt on retirement. There are some solid things going on up there. I'm not sure that my opponent is on board with them. I liked Act 120 that was enacted by Governor Rendell. That'll save about $33 billion. I like the governor's proposal to reduce the fees that we pay to the investment companies. The great thing about that is he doesn't need the acquiescence of the legislature to do that. Again, we disagree on extraction tax. If we do it correctly, we can use some of that to pay down the debt on a yearly basis. And I like the Tobash proposal, which will segue state employees, new state employees, from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution, estimated savings of about $10 billion. Now, having said all that, I think what we need to do after about 3-4 years, step back, let's look where we are. It's going to take years. This problem wasn't created overnight. It's going to take years to address it, but my proposal is after we do all those things, let's step back after 3-4 years, and if we need additional revenues, then we go there. But this idea that we have to throw all the good parts of the pension system away, I think I disagree totally.
Perfect. In just a sentence or two, why are you the right person to continue representing the district?
I'm the right person to continue representing the district because I do stand for Lebanon County values. I'm pro-life, I'm pro-gun, I'm pro-free markets. I stand for elimination of property taxes. I fought the good fight, and I don't absolutely walk in lockstep with my party. I've gone against my party on numerous key votes in Harrisburg because I stand for the values of the people of Lebanon County.
Mr. Long, a brief ending here.
My chief position, I think, attracts a lot of people is the fact that I'm for term limits. My competitor will not accept term limits. He has made the statement that bad representatives can be replaced. That is absolutely not true. I am for an independent commission to come in and set up these districts in a common sense, logical, fair way. I am for a moderate raise in the minimum wage. I'm for economic development. I'm a Democrat, and we get accused of raising taxes. I'm actually for lowering net corporate income taxes. In fact, my opponent did not go along with the governor when he proposed reducing net corporate income taxes from 9.9 to 4.9. Why? Because he wanted to close the Delaware loophole.
Okay.
The corporations who, in fact, have been getting away for decades not paying any taxes would have had to pay something, and he would not make a tough decision.
We got to end it right there. Thank you both very much for being here. I want to thank both candidates for taking part in today's debate. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th, and keep up with the latest election news on WGAL.com. There you can find more information on the other races we're following that you'll only find online.